Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mayor Commission work session. Today is April 25th, and the time is 10 a.m. The first item on the agenda is Community Outreach and Engagement Initiative. Let me say a few words before we turn over to staff. One of the first things I did when I became mayor is sat down with staff and said we needed to improve our community engagement strategy. I had observed as a commissioner too many times when it seemed like staff was thrown to the wolves, if you will, in various community meetings, and that wasn't fair to staff, and it also didn't give the community, I think, the quality of engagement that they wanted. And as a commissioner, that's a question we often ask, is what kind of outreach has staff done to the community? So I thought there needed to be a total reboot, if you will, of our strategy. So what you'll hear today is the result of months, perhaps even years of work on staff's part to come up with what I think is a very professional, comprehensive strategy toward community engagement. I believe it will give you commissioners the information you need as you are assessing different projects and trying to understand what information, what strategies have gone out, what communication strategies and outreach strategies have been employed for the particular project. And I think it will help staff as they engage with the public to have more of a formal approach to that process. So I'm very pleased, and hopefully you will be too, with the product that is going to be presented to us today. Ms. Johnson, did you want to say anything before we get into presentation?
Mayor, I can't say it any better than you have, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ferriero for her to do the overview and get the presentation started.
Excellent. Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, Mayor, Commissioners, Jennifer Ferriero, Director of Housing and Community Development. I am also very excited to be here with you today presenting this matter. As the Mayor alluded to or stated, we have been working at this for quite some time. We have heard your needs, we have heard the needs of the residents, and I think what we're going to bring forward to you today is something that we can all stand behind. A little bit of an overview of today's agenda. We're going to have an introduction of the City of West Palm Beach's engagement framework that's going to be presented by S.A. Nelson and Associates. We have Charisma Adams and Sophia Nelson here joining us. They were very crucial to this process and really were the ones that assisted us to put this framework together. We're going to provide you with an overview of the process itself. We're going to review the engagement toolkit that was developed and just discuss next steps in terms of how we're going to implement and move forward, and obviously take any questions and or comments that you may have. And with that said, I will turn it over to Charisma Adams and Sophia Nelson to initiate the conversation.
Good morning, Mayor and all of the Commission.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to work together with the Department of Housing and Community Development and all of your staff on this engagement framework. For the last probably 10 months, we've had the pleasure of going back and forth. Sophia and I have been doing community engagement for probably a little over 2 decades, and we've been able to bring some of those best practices, some of those strategies together, and just learn so much about the city and how you work, and then how we can bring that together to create something really great. So today we're going to introduce to you this framework, which is called BERT. BERT is the name of the framework. It is for Building Engaging Residents Together. As an acronym, and we thought that it would be nice to give it a name and a personality. We know that when you're teaching new concepts, when you're delivering things like this to individuals, it is oftentimes more caught than taught. And so we wanted to give this framework some personality. So it's kind of your personal Ash Jeeves or your little Geico. But this is your friend Bert, and we're hoping that for the next years to come, that your team, our staff, the team, and the city staff really learns Bert, adopts it, and Bert becomes their friend to help them engage the residents and the community. So Sophia's going to come and start to talk to you about why this framework is necessary.
All right. Good morning again, Mayor, the dais, staff.
That's it.
Am I not seeing? Oh, it's behind me, sorry.
It's behind you, I'm sorry.
I know, I thought it was over there. Okay, good morning again. Sophia Nelson, S.A. Nelson Associates. So thanks, well, I want to definitely thank the mayor for the vision and Jennifer for making sure that we stayed on task. There were definitely a few principles that we wanted to make sure was in this booklet. And as you can see here, one of the things we want to make sure that staff was able to do was to have careful planning. When we're talking about going into the community, we want them to be able to know why they're going out to the community. Also, inclusion. Who are we going out to speak to? It's the whom and the who is the most important factor of this. Who are the stakeholders? Who will make this project the best project possible? Collaboration. Who's missing from the table? If you're around the table and some of the answers are not there, we need to know who is missing. This packet will tell you that. Openness and learning. We want staff, we know that they are skilled at what they do, but we want them to be open about how the community wants to be engaged, how the community would love the project to see become unfolded in their communities, and that's where the openness comes in. Transparency and trust. The community needs to trust not only the dais and the mayor, but it needs to be able to trust staff with the information that they bring back to them, that it has been researched and it has been ready, and the community is ready to accept it. Impact and action. That's all we want our projects to do, right? We want our projects to be fruitful. We want the community not just to be engaged, but to be happy, to be ambassadors about the projects that are happening in their community. And last but not least, as Charisma says, we want Bert to be your buddy, a Bert buddy. So it's about sustainability of this particular toolkit. It is not a static toolkit. It will be updated on and on and on until you leave the dais. This should be here as a guideline for all staff. I pitch it back to Jennifer.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, as we go through this presentation, Charisma, Sophia, feel free to insert anything that I may have missed. So what we wanted to develop was a very simple framework for staff to be able to utilize and have a system in place in terms of how we engage the residents. As you know, some of the challenges that we have had is that depending on the individual, they will have different ways in which they engage the public or how they go about that process. So we really wanted to put a process that was simple for staff to use, that didn't overburden staff, but that still captured the information that we needed and the resident feedback that we needed so that we can make informed decisions. So 3 simple steps. The first step is we want to make sure that we plan the engagement and that we complete the BERT planning form. One of the documents that you have before you is a planning form, and that form essentially, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail later, really helps us to think and staff to think, what are we really trying to accomplish? Oftentimes we go into an engagement activity and we don't really know what it is that we're trying what is the end goal? So this helps us kind of think through that and plan out the activities that we're going to engage in. Obviously, step 2 is executing that engagement. But other than executing it is obviously, we want to document it. We want to document how we engage the public. We want to document the feedback that we've received. We want to be able to capture what it is that the residents are telling us. And lastly, we will complete a BERT engagement report. This document is going to be very essential to the residents and to you, the elected officials, to be able to capture all of the overall engagement efforts that were completed on a specific project, the key takeaways from the residents, and that way you can, if needed, you can make the decisions that you need, including the feedback received from our residents. I do want to say that this specific framework that we developed for the city was one that we took from the International Association for Public Participation. So a lot of the elements came from that. We also looked at the City of Golden's Community Engagement Planning Guide, and we really modified it and simplified it to meet the needs of the city of West Palm Beach. So I want to give credit to those 2 organizations that assisted us as we developed this process. So step number 1, again, planning and engaging, planning your engagement and completing the BERT planning form. So the first thing is, and in this planning form, it's really going to serve as that internal document that staff is going to complete so that we can start to to really get a good look of how we're going to move forward with these engagement efforts. It's going to help staff think about what is the outcome that we're trying to reach. Who are the individuals that are impacted? What is the appropriate level of engagement? That part is very important. We're going to touch on that a little later. Who are the decision makers? Who are the key stakeholders that we need to include? What are the appropriate engagement techniques? Do we want to do flyers? Do we want to do in-person meetings? Do we want to do polls? It's going to really help us think through that process. So the BERT planning form, it outlines the project overview. Again, it gives you an engagement questionnaire. That questionnaire really starts to prompt some of the things that I just brought up. It helps us to determine the level of engagement, and we wanted to make sure that we had 3 basic levels of engagement. We want either to inform, which is level A, level B, to involve the public, or level C, to collaborate with the public. In that BERT planning tool, we have some assessment questionnaire and an impact scale, and based on that methodology, we're going to determine if the specific engagement activities falls under category A, B, or C. It's going to provide us with the minimum engagement techniques based on the categories, provide us tools that we can utilize, and help us to identify the key stakeholders. So this chart right here is very essential because it really details the purpose and when to use and what the impact is for a level A, which is to inform, a level B, which is to involve, or a level C. So for example, in a level A, that's really pretty much one-way communication. This is when we simply want to inform the public on any issues that we may have. Some examples are when we want to inform residents of lane closures. We may not necessarily want or may need feedback on that specific activity. If there's a water main break or any community events that are upcoming, this is one-way communication. We're simply informing the public. When we have a level B involvement, that's when we want to make sure that we get the residents' feedback that we need, right? And when do we use this level B? This is when we want to improve an existing service or program, but we have limited options for change. So for example, we just received a grant to complete a streetscape project. We know that we have to utilize the funding for that specific purpose, right? However, after engaging our residents, after going about our engagement efforts, we learn that the residents want to make sure that we delay the construction after the holiday season, or they want to make sure that we need, or they let us know that we need additional lighting. So we take that feedback, we modify our plan, and then we're able to execute it based on the resident feedback. What you will look at in this chart as well is that it allows us to identify based on the engagement techniques, based on the level of engagement, what techniques we're going to employ. So with the involve, we're going to need a minimum 1 print, 2 digital, and 1 in-person meeting. So that provides staff with, when knowing whether it's level A, B, or C, what type of engagement techniques they need to employ and what the minimum requirements are for each. When you have a level B involvement project, we have recently hired, not recently, 6 months ago, a civic engagement supervisor who is Charity Lewis, and she will be working with staff directly to employ some of these engagement techniques.
Jennifer, go back to that slide.
Yes.
How did you come up with the number of and type of engagement techniques? For example, with the B, you got 1 print, 2 digital. Why not 3 digital, 1 in person? How did you come up with those numbers?
Well, we wanted, Mayor, to based on the impact of it, what is the way that we can reach the residents in the most informed way and in the different ways, right? We all know that print is just one way. We all know that digital is, not everybody can be reached through digital. We know that sometimes we're gonna need in-person meetings. So we wanted to put together these techniques based on, the intensity of that specific project, depending on the impact of it, and have a variety of different ways in which we're engaging the
And that's
public.
a minimum number, right?
It's
they
a
can
minimum.
always do more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Also, Mayor, it's part of our best practice. This is Sophia.
Okay.
It's part of our best practice. And so we use that intellectual knowledge that we had to say, this, at the minimum, this is where we need to be
Very
from
good.
all of the projects that we've done in the past.
Thank you.
And then a level C. Level C is the higher range of the impact of the type of engagement that we will need. This is when we really want the residents to be decision makers. One great example of that is, let's say we're in the process of developing a new community center, and we really want the residents' feedback to know, what is the most important thing to you? Do you want tennis court, or do you want pickleball, or do you want, what kind of activities would you like to see in this location? That's when we really want to work directly with the residents and really get that two-way communication and really get their feedback and incorporate that feedback to the greatest extent possible into the project. With a level C project, it will require a minimum 1 print, at minimum 2 digital, and a minimum 2 in-person meetings. In this particular type of engagement, obviously our staff will help to lead these efforts, but it may be decided based on different scenarios. It may be decided that we will need some consultants to assist us. We've had certain projects or certain times where we have hired outside support, depending on the intensity of or the need from the residents and what it was that we were really trying to accomplish. So all of this information, in essence, it's captured in that initial BERT planning form. That BERT planning form is going to be approved by the department directors, the civic engagement supervisor, and myself. We'll take a look at it. It may be decided that as we're reviewing this planning form, that staff may determine that they really need a level B. But after we look at it, we say, this is actually a level C. We're going to need to do more engagement for all of these reasons. So we have the ability to modify the planning form and ultimately what it is that we need to complete. Obviously, city administration will be consulted on all of the level type of C projects. And one very key important thing is that the commission, you're going to know what are the upcoming engagements, when they're going to take place. We intend on sending you emails periodically, and we haven't decided that as of yet, but letting you know, here are the engagement dates or the engagement activities that are upcoming. Here is the link to the form so that you know how we came up with these decisions. This is, where they're being located. We're breaking that down by district. So you'll be receiving emails very similar to what you're seeing in this presentation, so that you're notified and that you know ahead of time what's upcoming, and so that you can let your constituents know as well. So you'll be receiving that on a either weekly, bi-weekly, or basis. We'll make the determination shortly.
Yeah, a question from Commissioner Ward.
So when it comes to submitting the form, I noticed that it's a couple layers of who gets to approve, and then it goes, what's the time frame are you guys looking at between when it gets submitted for that third approval?
A day or two. We want to have a quick turnaround for us.
Or are you creating a standard of, hey, upper level people, we need you to be responsive on this, so let's create a timeline of 48 hours that we need you to respond by? Or is it just going to be, hey, we expect you to respond? You know what I'm saying? The difference between an expectation versus setting a boundary line.
The upper level people is basically me and the city administrator, so it will get addressed.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's the division head. Where was it?
Yeah, we have the department director that's going to execute. Obviously, you want the director to know that your staff is trying to complete this engagement. And then it goes to after that, it's going to come to Charity and I to review.
Okay.
We'll do that again. We have an internal where we want to do that between a day or so. And then if needed, it'll go to administration for them to look at. But we know the importance of this, and this is something that we got to prioritize and look at. Every day we get invoices that we have to approve. Every day we get stuff that we know is of priority, and this will fall under that.
Okay. And then why did you guys include the political interest in the planning form, in the numbering? You've got staff perception, you've got the actual belief the public could improve, and then what is the anticipated level of political interest? Why did you guys include that in your numbering scale?
It's important. It is important to know, if there's political considerations that we want to, acknowledge. I think it's important to consider that in every decision that we make. So that was a question that we wanted to include on there.
Okay. And then finally,
is there anything you want to add to that, Charisma?
Again, it's like she said, it's very important. Number one, the issue may not be political within City Hall, but outside the community, the stakeholders may feel that it's a political issue. So we definitely want to know what the heightened intensity from the outside is, so that we are able to then know, is this a B or a C? Because if it's a C, then we need to make sure that we give it the utmost attention that's needed.
And also, sometimes you have a project that crosses multiple agencies that can become political. You may have a street that crosses FDOT, crosses the school board, crosses the city, crosses the county, and it may become political in nature just depending on who the individuals are, what the project is, and what everyone's sense of urgency about it is. So that's kind of why that's included in there, not from a standard political sense.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, I think under collaborate, I think there's a typo. It says 2 and then 1 in the parentheses. So
Yeah, that's in your chart.
We noted that.
Oh, sorry, apologize.
No, thank you.
We're good? Okay.
Okay, proceed.
Excellent, thank you, Mayor. So obviously, after we have our planning form that's been developed and approved, we have to execute the plan, right? So staff will work with the civic engagement supervisor to create a timeline. We want to create a timeline for actions that are needed. We want to ensure that when the engagement is taking place, that we're collecting the data that we need to collect. What is the feedback that we're receiving? We want to make sure that we're taking notes, taking some photos that's going to help us later on to demonstrate the engagement that took place. If we get any emails from residents, we want to make sure that we're being responsive. If we get any feedback in terms of either on social media, we want to, again, make sure that we're addressing those concerns and being responsive to those needs. And obviously, making sure that we're taking and evaluating the feedback that we are receiving. After we do all of that, we want to make sure that that information is captured in your BERT summary form. You have that summary form in front of you. And in essence, it is just going to capture when the activity took place, the date of the activity, how that information was distributed, letting the residents know that this activity was taking place, who participated, was it a Zoom meeting, how many participants we had, were there any comments from the Zoom meeting, who were the panelists, and what were the key takeaways. I think that's the most important part that we want to make sure that we highlight. What did we take away from this engagement? What were the major concerns of the residents? What did they like? What did they not like? That is something that we really want to make sure that we capture and that we document. So after all of this is completed, we have the engagement planned, executed, the forms are completed. The final end product is going to be a BERT engagement form. I'm sorry, report, BERT engagement report. And you have seen this before, and we have provided to you a very similar report when we did the 8111 feedback session, when we did, you got an engagement report from that. Also, when we did the 25th and the Broadway improvements, you received a report as well. So that report, in essence, it's going to include a summary of the project and the reasons for the engagement. It's going to include the planning forms, so you know how we got to where we got. It's going to include the summary forms, so you have the details of the engagement. It's going to include a summary of the takeaways. This is, in essence, what the residents are saying. And we're going to also attach engagement materials, copies of all the materials that went out, any copies of emails that we may have received, letters of support, letters of non-support, right? We want to put all of that together in this package that you will receive so that you can make, again, an informed decision on the areas that you need to make an informed decision on. If needed, I envision staff also attaching that to ACMs, to your agenda memorandum, so that you have that with you. These reports will be shared with you so that there is never a question of what we did, what we didn't do, where we, you will have all of this before and ready for you to review, again, as needed or as necessary. So everything that I've just discussed today, we have put together in what we have called a BERT engagement toolkit. And that toolkit, and you have that in front of you as well, it's just a resource that staff is going to use to help guide them through this process. It's going to have all of the guiding principles. It's going to have examples of the reports. It's going to have examples of the documents. It's going to have just a step-by-step and summary of, and helping them to complete all the documents that they need to complete and help guiding them through BERT and through what we are building here today. Obviously, and as St. Nelson and Associates alluded to, we want to make sure that we're evaluating this process. This is the first time we've ever implemented something like this. We're learning as we're going, so please have some grace. I ask for your grace with this process, just because it's so new, and there's going to be a lot of staff that's going to be learning this process. And again, we're going to have a lot of learning moments along the way. There's probably a lot of things that we're not considering right now that will take place and we're going to have to address at some point. But at least this gives us a starting foundation for what it is that we're trying to build and for what this mayor and this commission really really is supportive of, and that is making sure that we have adequate community engagement practices in our city. So the next steps for staff is we want to meet with the directors one-on-one. We have met with some of them already. We have tested this process already, so we feel like it's working. We've done a couple projects with engineering. So, but we want to meet with all the directors and get some final input from them on this. Toolkit, make some of the corrections to our typos. Thank you, Commissioner Ward. We're also developing a training for staff, for the directors and managers, department liaisons. We're going to do some City Edge training as well. We want to have that implemented and completed by next month. And then obviously we want to launch the citywide framework. I put summer of 2020. We're giving ourselves a little bit of a cushion there. I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver, but we are already doing a lot of this. Charities working closely with a lot of different departments, and it seems to be working fairly well, but we have a lot of work to do to get all the other departments on board. And with that said, I just have final comments before the mayor opens it for questions. I just want to say thank you to our consultants. They have been amazing. I can't say nothing but just positive things about you both. I mean, you've been excellent, so we couldn't have done it without you. Charity Lewis, who's our civic engagement supervisor, she's been fabulous. She's done a great job executing this, working through the kinks. You know, sometimes I get a little scared because I can be a little intense, so Charity, thank you for just being an excellent team player and for working us with this. And that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address them now.
Thank you, Jennifer, and I want to thank you. This probably is not squarely within the body of work for Housing and Community Development Director, but you took on the assignment enthusiastically and obviously professionally, so I want to thank you for stepping outside of your lane slightly to help us with what I think is a very important project for the city. Again, I think it takes our city to the next level when it comes to professionalism, customer service, and it helps you, commissioners. It gives you the data that you need and have been asking for to help you make your decisions in a more knowledgeable and professional manner. And as Jennifer says, this continues to be an evolving product. As we get engaged with particular situations, we'll figure out what worked, what didn't work, and we will tweak this accordingly, certainly looking for input from you all to help us make this as best as we can get it. I'll open up for any questions from any of you. Commissioner Ward.
I just have a comment. Thank you. I think this is fantastic. I think obviously there's going to be hiccups along the way and a learning curve, which is just expected. But this is what the residents I know in my area have been asking for is kind of a guideline. And I think this is going to be super helpful for us to do our jobs better. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Fox.
Thank you so much. I have a couple questions, but I'll just ask the first one and let others jump in. But thank you so much. I think we couldn't have found a better team than the two of you to put this together. It's amazing, and I am so happy. I know it's going to help all of us do our jobs so much better and being able to represent people and hearing their voices. My first question is, there are some neighborhoods, like we had a meeting last week in the Historic Northwest. It was a CRA meeting, and one of the attendees mentioned that, why are there more people from the city at this event than there are residents? And I know our CRA works so hard to, they have texts and they have emails and they have signs that they post in the neighborhood, but sometimes that's not the right method for every neighborhood to get the message. So I guess my question is, like, when we're looking at some of these engagements that might say they might have 2 print and 2 digital and then 2 in person, is there something that we can be thinking about in terms of if the digital and the print are not going to get people to the physical in-person meetings, like what are the ways that we can engage to make sure people even know that those events are going on?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you so much. One of the steps you've already started, you have a civic engagement supervisor that another part Jennifer didn't mention, but we're building a database. And part of that database will include communities, groups, who are the leaders in those communities? Whether it is a official position, a lot of communities have unofficial leaders, you know, having their information in there, their email address, their phone number, making a point to build a relationship, because that's what helps with engagement. It's easy to send an email. We know when we get emails, we open emails from people we know, like and trust, more quickly than we do some of the others. And so it'll be an ongoing process of also relationship building from the department, from the civic engagement department, you know, sometimes attending those neighborhood meetings, sometimes popping into those and just letting them see you when it's not something that the city is looking for from them. You know, it's easy to say we're all at a meeting when we need input from you, but do we show up when they're just talking and having their meeting and just letting them know we care about what's going on, even if it doesn't involve one of our projects? So I think that is one of the most effective ways to get people to show up when you need them, is showing up when you don't.
Commissioner Fox, if I may add to that, this is the beginning of engagement. We really want to grow it. We really want to do a lot of what Charisma had just talked about. Maybe in the future have more support to be able to go to these meetings. So that is something that we want to grow. We want to put programs in place where we can get, you know, the resident leaders and kind of put them through a mini city edge type of learning about the city. This is how the city functions, so that we can get more of those leaders and build more of those leaders in our community. So this is just the beginning, because we really want to grow it and make it something special, something that we can all be proud of. So I get your points, and we're going to definitely think that through as we move forward.
And I think, commissioners, you can help us with that. You know your district. You know who the players are in your district. If you feel that there's someone who should definitely be included, you could certainly reach out, or you could communicate with staff and say, you know, I know you're working on a strategy. Make sure person X or person Y get a specific or personal invitation. So again, this is something that can be massaged as we go along, but we'll be looking for input from you as well. You said you had a couple of questions. Did you want to go to your second one, Commissioner Fox? Or you want to? Okay, Commissioner Warren.
Mine is more of a comment, and I just want to say thank you very much for listening and responding. Mayor, I've talked a lot about outreach and engagement, and about that outreach and engagement being authentic, and not that we're just checking a box to say that we did something, but that it is meaningful, and that we understand that we are having conversations where we're communicating information as well as receiving information from the community. I think this is a wonderful step in that direction. I think this is really a leap. And thank you, Ms. Ferriel, for stepping up and outside of your box, even though I don't know what is outside of your box. With you, I think there is no box for sure. But this is very, very important, and it's something that people have asked for. I'm happy to be a part of this change and moving toward the direction of making sure that people feel valued and heard. And I'm looking forward to us continuing to make progress here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, did you have another question? President?
Thank you so much. So I love everything about this, and I know that it's sort of geared towards the internal dialogues that we have, like when you mentioned 8111 and things like that. But I'm wondering if there is a way that we can also turn this method into something that we give to developers, let's say, when they come to us and have a project that is, you know, that they are responsible for the outreach. Is there some way that we can give them a checklist so that we say that when they come back to us, we're going to ask them, did you meet with the neighborhood associations near your project? Did you meet with any businesses that might be within, you know, whatever X amount of, you know, place from your business, so that they are given the tools that we are going to expect and we are going to ask them when they come to us. And so that sometimes it's a guessing game for them, that they don't know what is going to be asked of them and what they should be doing. Maybe we can just make it easy. I'm wondering if there's some way that we can incorporate sort of external checklists for others that are not, that are our partners that we're working with.
That's I'm
going to jump in there because, and I appreciate the question, and I think I appreciate the spirit in which it's given. What I don't want us to do is the work of the private sector. This is our body of work. This helps the city do its job better. And also, I don't want to get the private sector an excuse. Because if a decision doesn't go their way, they may say, well, the city told us how to do public engagement, or we looked at their checklist and, you know, we didn't feel we had a fair chance. Now, I don't want there to be any suggestion that we as the city have been doing the work that is required by the public sector. So I will politely decline that invitation for us to work with them. They can hire their own consultants, their own experts to help them, and for many of them, it's not going to be their first rodeo when it comes to public engagement. So I hear where you're coming from, Commissioner, but I don't want us to get in the way or to be somebody can blame us, a whipping boy, that something. Anyway, I don't want them to blame us if their public engagement goes south. So I'm going to insert that.
I'll just say, look, we have this framework that we're working on, and I think the most important part of the framework at the end of it, not the most important, I take that back. Let me rephrase my comments. One of the key components of this framework is that you have a report at the end of the day that outlines all of the engagement efforts. If a developer saw what the city provided and they wanted to mirror something very similar, that's great. It'll be out there for public viewing. They can look at it, and maybe that's something that, they would maybe want to put together that will give you that comfort level. Say, look, this is all the engagement. This is who we engage. Here are the takeaways. Here's who was part of those meetings. They wanted to embody that by any means. They're able to do that. But I'm following the direction of the mayor, and he says we're not moving forward with that, then we'll leave it as is. Oops.
President Fox.
I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't suggesting that we do the work. I was just suggesting that we give them maybe the checklist of to give them suggestions to come back. But I had one other thought. Recently, on one of our agendas, I'm going to give you a copy. There was a section that was added for the outreach that was done, and it basically talked about the staff had asked for a certain outreach to certain neighborhood associations, and what came back was certain letters and things. And I just wanted to suggest that as well. I'll give you a copy just to look at it, and the mayor, just for future thoughts. It's nice because on the agenda itself was listed the engagement that was done, and so that often when the public is looking at these agendas in order to come and complain or say that no, there wasn't enough outreach, that they could actually see up front, what the outreach was that was done.
Right, so the goal, going back to that point, is that staff could attach the report to the agenda item. So they could always reference the report, attaches the report, and that information is obviously included within the ACM. So that is one of the directives, or one of the suggestions that we're going to give to staff, is include your engagement report, because it's going to be able to help you document your efforts.
Any other questions, comments? Was your hand up, Madam City Attorney?
Yeah, I did want to say one quick thing.
Okay.
I think that it's very important to note that when we're talking about the engagement and what the staff has put together is really engagement for city-initiated projects and things that the city is doing. Many times when this body sees a developer come in, they're coming in as a quasi-judicial proceeding that requires that the board make its decision based on the notice requirements that are required by the code and the statute. And we do want to be very careful not to add additional steps or requirements outside of what's legally required for a review of those quasi-judicial matters.
You stated that much more eloquently. And also there's a legal reason. So, Madam City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, I would like to just maybe underscore the mayor's commendation to staff. I know Ms. Ferrier didn't include herself, and the mayor recognized her, but she clearly took the leadership role on pulling all of this together and have spent countless hours going through documents to kind of, condense this down into a manageable format. So I don't want that to be lost on me as the city administrator. But when this process started out, kind of dating how far back it goes, Mr. Fana was overseeing HCD, and he had a key role in helping to shepherd this initiative through, and I want to recognize his efforts as well. And then Charity Lewis, when she got the promotion, She just hit the ground running and jumped right in and did quite a bit of the legwork. And then to Nelson and Associates, you all have just been very professional, just very enthusiastic and very engaged in helping us to pull these documents together. The mayor had two presentations from S.A. Nelson at the executive team meeting, and so they just bring in a level of excitement, you know, about this whole new framework, and it's just refreshing to see that we have consultants who understand the critical role of community engagement and how policy gets shaped and what we bring forward to the commission. With all of that being said, I do want us to maintain our flexibility as we move forward, that this is a work in progress and there are going to be a number of lessons learned. And as we are flexible as we move through this, you know, we can benefit from those lessons learned by just making the modifications that will help improve this process, and we'll get to that place where hopefully it become a model for other municipalities. So I just want to thank the mayor and the commission, and certainly the staff, prior and current, who have been involved in this effort.
Thank you.
And could you dispel any rumor that any similarity between me and Bert is totally unintentional?
We weren't going to bring it up.
Just the glasses, Mayor.
It has nothing to do with the mayor. State that for the record, please. Okay. Anything else?
I think Ms. Johnson would disagree, Mayor, but
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you all very much. Look forward to the rollout of this. And again, I think it would just help us as a city, as policymakers, take our game to a totally different level. So thank you.
thank you. The cookies are edible, by the way.
Okay. I don't have anything under mayor's matters. Commissioners, do you have anything for the good of the body? Okay. Well, thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.